Picture this, a smoky bar in the 21st century. It's late, people are half watching sports, half scrolling their phones. Someone brings up Catherine the Great. There's a pause, a smirk, and then somebody says it. Wasn't she the one who died? With a horse? The table erupts in nervous laughter. Nobody actually knows the details. Nobody can explain where the story came from. But everybody's heard it. Now cut to St. Petersburg, 1796. A 67-year-old empress, the most powerful woman in Europe, lies unconscious on a bed in the Winter Palace. Courtiers whisper in the corridor. Doctors lean over her, helpless. She has suffered a massive stroke. By the next evening she will be dead. There is no horse in the room. There is no bizarre contraption. Just an exhausted ruler whose body finally gave out after 34 years running an empire. So how the hell did we get from that to one of the dirtiest, most persistent sex rumors in European history? Let's go back to the beginning, before the gossip, before the memes, before the horse. Catherine the Great wasn't even Russian. She was born Sophie of Anhalt-Zerbst in 1729, a minor German princess with a pushy mother, an ambitious brain, and very little money. When she was 15, she was shipped off to Russia as a candidate to marry the heir to the throne, the future Peter III. Picture a teenage girl hauling through the snow to St. Petersburg, studying Russian by candlelight, deliberately making herself faint in church to impress the devout Empress Elizabeth. She understood the assignment, survive, adapt, and climb. She married Peter. The marriage was a disaster. He was immature, possibly abusive, and more interested in toy soldiers and his dog than his wife. So Catherine did what smart people do in bad situations. She built her own power base. She converted to Russian orthodoxy. She cultivated allies among nobles, guards officers, and intellectuals. She read Voltaire and Montesquieu at night, while the court drank itself stupid. Fast forward to 1762. Peter becomes emperor. He manages, in just a few months, to alienate the army, the church, and pretty much everyone else. Catherine makes her move. With the help of the Imperial Guard, she stages a coup, rides through St. Petersburg in uniform, and has herself proclaimed Catherine II, Empress of all the Russias. Peter is forced to abdicate and soon dies under suspicious circumstances. You won't believe how fast she grows into the job. Over the next 3 decades, Catherine expands Russian territory into the Black Sea region, and Poland grabs Crimea, modernizes administration, promotes limited religious tolerance, flirts intellectually with the French Enlightenment, and turns St. Petersburg into a major cultural capital. She corresponds with Voltaire and Diderot. She commissions the Bronze Horseman monument to Peter the Great, literally putting herself on the shoulders of Russia's founding Tsar in stone. In short, she is not some random royal footnote. She's one of the most effective rulers of the 18th century. And that's exactly the problem. Because for a lot of people, both in Russia and abroad, the idea of a woman wielding that much power is fundamentally threatening. And when patriarchal systems feel threatened, they always reach for the same weapon, sex. Already in her lifetime, Catherine's enemies are inventing stories. They call her the Messalina of the Neva, after the notoriously promiscuous Roman empress. They snicker about her lovers. They accuse her of nymphomania, voyeurism, and every other flavor of improper desire they can think of. Here's the part that's not rumor. Catherine did have lovers, several of them. Over the course of her life she had a long, complicated partnership with Grigory Potemkin, and then a series of younger favorites chosen with his help, a kind of informal, consensual arrangement that was frankly not that unusual in 18th century courts. Male rulers did the same or worse, and got a wink and a shrug. When a woman does it, suddenly she's a monster. Now about the horse. The core of the myth goes like this: late in life, Catherine supposedly developed a sexual fixation on a stallion. She allegedly rigged up an elaborate harness so she could lie underneath while the animal, well, you get the idea. During one of these sessions, the story claims, the harness snapped, the horse fell, and she died from her injuries. That's the version passed around in dorm rooms and comment sections. It's also total nonsense. First red flag, timing. Historians who've actually traced the rumor point out that it doesn't show up in contemporary eyewitness sources describing Catherine's death. Instead, it spreads later, in satirical pamphlets, cartoons, and gossip, especially in France and Britain, countries that had every reason to smear an authoritarian Russian empress. Second red flag, we know down to the hour how Catherine actually died. On the morning of November 16, 1796, she suffered a stroke, likely in her bathroom, was carried to her bed, fell into a coma, received last rites and died the following evening. An autopsy confirmed the stroke. No crushed bones, no destroyed harness, no horse anywhere near the room. Third red flag, logistics. If you're genuinely trying to engineer some horse-related sex contraption in a palace, you're not doing it alone. You'd need grooms, craftsmen, and guards all in on the secret. The story requires us to believe a whole team of people helped set this up, and then, what? Just let the rumor leak with zero written testimony from anyone actually involved? As one historian put it, the engineering alone would have left a paper trail. It doesn't. So where did the story come from? Here's the ugly truth. Bestiality rumors were a standard slur in early modern Europe, especially against groups seen as barbarous or other. Long before Catherine was born, a German writer named Adam Olearius was already pushing stereotypes that Russians were prone to sex with animals, horses in particular. Those accusations turned up in anti-Russian propaganda for centuries. When Catherine took the throne and turned Russia into a serious geopolitical player, she became the perfect canvas for that existing prejudice. Mix misogyny with Russophobia, add a dash of envy over her success, and suddenly the idea that this powerful foreign woman was secretly doing unspeakable things with a horse felt right to people predisposed to hate her. Psychology Today did a breakdown of the legend and made the point brutally clear. Rumors stick when they capture something people are already primed to believe, even if they're objectively ridiculous. The horse myth has lasted over 200 years not because it's plausible, but because it confirms the biases of people who want to see Catherine as an unhinged sex fiend, rather than a competent ruler. There's another layer here too. In the 18th and 19th centuries, political satire was vicious. Pamphlets, cartoons, and libelous memoirs spread wild stories about rulers all over Europe. Marie Antoinette was accused of incest and orgies. Louis XV got smeared as a diseased predator. Catherine, with her series of lovers and her unapologetic intelligence, was low-hanging fruit. One British or French cartoon could say in one image what pages of text would struggle to. Imagine a crude drawing of an aging empress and a stallion. No context needed, no nuance possible. It was clickbait before the internet. Shocking, sexual, and easy to repeat. And repeat it they did. By the 19th century, the horse story is turning up in salacious biographies and gossip collections. By the 20th, it's part of the unofficial curriculum, whispered in classrooms, passed in notes, snuck into novels. Today it's a meme, a throwaway line in comedy shows, a fun fact that refuses to die even when everyone half suspects it's garbage. Meanwhile, Catherine's actual achievements get reduced to bullet points. Expand the empire, reform education, patronize the arts, secularize church lands, correspond with Enlightenment thinkers, and then an instant pivot back to, but what about the horse? It's a textbook case of how a woman's complicated life can be flattened into a single, sexualized story. Let's zoom in for a second on the real Catherine, not the cartoon. In her private writings, you see someone who's far from the caricature. She worries about Russia's backwardness. She vents about incompetent officials. She geeks out over architecture and theatre. She jokes about her own aging body. Her relationship with Potemkin is messy, intense, and deeply political. He's her general, her administrator, her sometime lover, and the man behind the supposedly fake Potemkin villages that, in reality, were mostly exaggerated PR stories of their own. Her later lovers? They're usually younger nobles who get money, estates, and titles in exchange for companionship, loyalty, and, yes, sex. You can absolutely criticize the power imbalance there. But pretending that this consenting adult arrangement somehow naturally leads to bestiality is just malicious fantasy. And yet, even serious modern portrayals can't resist nodding to the myth. TV shows, novels, and memes drop horse references like Easter eggs, winking at audiences who know the story. Here's the thing. Once you know how it started, it's not really funny anymore. It's lazy, and it helps bury the real historical questions Catherine's life raises. Questions like, how did a foreign teenage girl outmaneuver one of Europe's most dysfunctional courts and hold power for 3 decades? How did she balance Enlightenment ideals with autocratic rule, hosting philosophers while crushing rebellions? How did her foreign policy remap Eastern Europe and set up conflicts that still echo today? Those topics are uncomfortable, complicated, and politically loaded. The horse story, by contrast, is easy. It lets us laugh, feels superior, and avoid engaging with the fact that Catherine was both a reformer and an imperialist, both enlightened and ruthless, a full human being, not just a walking punchline. So why does this matter now beyond historical nerd outrage? Because the pattern hasn't gone away. Powerful women in politics, business, or media still get sexual rumors weaponized against them. It's the same playbook: take ambition, add discomfort with a woman's autonomy, and translate it into a story about her body being out of control. The technology is new, the tactic is ancient. Catherine the Great's horse myth is basically the boss-level version of that, a smear campaign so extreme that it outlived the people who invented it, crawled through centuries of gossip, and now floats through our culture as something I heard once in school. The least we can do is call it what it is: a lie. The real scandal here isn't that an empress supposedly did something unspeakable with a horse. It's that an entire society was so rattled by a competent, sexually autonomous woman that it preferred to remember her as a grotesque joke, rather than grapple with what she actually did in the world. So next time someone drops that line, "Wasn't she the one with the horse?" you'll know the answer. No. She wasn't crushed under a stallion, she died of a stroke at the height of her power. The horse lived only in the dirty imagination of her enemies, and in ours, when we let the rumor stand unchallenged. If this deep dive into Europe's dirtiest non-scandal gave you a new way to see Catherine the Great, and the way we treat powerful women in general, hit that like button. Tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from, and subscribe for more stories where the history is real, but the gossip needs a serious fact check.